Hi there, and welcome to Out There, a Cryptid podcast. I'm Josh, and today we're stepping into the unsettling world of nightmares. The ones that start like any other dream, until something shifts. The ones that feel too real. The ones that don't let go when you wake up. Let's dive in. I know it's been a bit since the last full episode, but we're getting back to it, I promise. So thanks for hanging in there while things settle down on my end. I've missed this, and we've got some seriously creepy episodes lined up. But I wanted to ease us back in with a Reddit episode that I know each and every one of you has experienced. Something that seems so mundane, but might be much more than it seems. We'll get into the nightmare Reddit stories right after this. There's something uniquely terrifying about nightmares. It's not just a bad dream, it's the kind that sticks with you long after you've woken up. Your heart's pounding, your body's tense, and for a moment, you're not totally sure what's real and what isn't. Nightmares tap into something primal, something deep in our brains that doesn't care if we're safe in bed. And while we've all had them, science still doesn't fully understand why they happen. Most nightmares happen during REM sleep. That's when your brain is most active and where most dreams take place. A lot of different things can cause them: stress, anxiety, trauma, certain medications, even sleep disorders like apnea or insomnia. People with PTSD often report having the same nightmare over and over again, while others might find themselves stuck in disturbing dream loops after a rough day. Some people even swear that eating right before bed makes their dreams more intense, and while that one doesn't have a ton of science behind it, it's definitely something that comes up a lot. Now, just to be clear, this episode isn't about sleep paralysis. That's a whole different beast, and yes, we will cover it eventually, because it does deserve its own deep dive. But today we're focusing on nightmares, the ones where you're fully asleep, fully dreaming, and things just take a terrifying turn. As for why nightmares happen in the first place, there are a few different theories. One is that they help us process emotions, especially fear. Another says they're tied to memory, and that nightmares are just a side effect of your brain trying to sort through stuff it doesn't totally understand. And then there's the evolutionary theory, which I kind of love. The idea that nightmares once helped us mentally prepare for world threats, like predators or danger in the wild. Whatever the cause, one thing's for sure. When you're in it, it feels real. And tonight, we're diving into some of the most unsettling, unforgettable nightmares people have shared on Reddit. So get comfortable, maybe keep a light on, and let's get into it. I was touring a house, but when I opened the door, it led me into the living room of the apartment I lived in when I was 5. I bathed in the nostalgia as I rummaged through all the things that were lying around. But as soon as I looked at the other door in this room, I felt a slight shiver go down my spine. And that was almost completely drowned out by the nostalgia. I got curious and went to that door, expecting it to lead to the kitchen of this particular house, but instead, the door took me to the room my brother and I shared in another apartment we lived in when we were in middle school. Again, I took my time rummaging through the video games and stuff, reminiscing about all the memories I had here. Like before, as soon as I finished, I looked at the door again and felt that chill down my spine get stronger. I get up to leave the room, and like before, it takes me to another room of another house/apartment I lived in the past. I would reminisce and bathe in all the nostalgia of the great memories I had of those rooms and houses. But the more rooms I went through, the darker the rooms got, and the more that feeling of dread and terror grew, to the point that I became completely overwhelmed by it. By the time it got really bad, I was ready to walk out the door of the last house I ended up in, but instead of the sunlit outdoors, the door led me into a dark, vast basement that was basically made of the worst parts of every basement I have ever been in. It was completely dark except for the middle, where there was one hanging light bulb lit above a figure of a person kneeling on the floor. By now, the feeling of terror was suffocating, but I still grabbed a pipe as a weapon and approached the person. As I steadily got closer, I see that the figure under the light bulb was a woman kneeling on the floor with her back facing me, and I could hear that she was sobbing. I lowered my guard, asking her if she was okay, and approached her to tap her on her shoulder to see if she was okay. As soon as I did, she turns around and suddenly going from sobbing to belligerently crying and starts screaming at me with an unnaturally loud screeching voice. "You killed him. Why did you kill my son?" I was freaked out, but I did not attack her. I fully expected her to have the demonically distorted faces from all those horror movies and stuff, but she looked like a regular woman who was grieving, and I just could not get myself to hurt her. Instead, she kept screaming that same thing over and over again. Her voice got louder and louder. I saw that she was growing bigger and bigger, or maybe I was somehow becoming smaller and smaller. It was hard to tell. And eventually, she was now a giant, towering over me, pressing me down with her hands while moving her face right up to mine, glaring at me with her teary, bloodshot eyes. I felt oppressed by her voice and her breath, but I felt completely overwhelmed by a horrific sense of guilt the more she screamed at me. For some reason, I felt that I have met this woman before, and that I really might have killed her son, or at least got her son killed by accident, but I could not remember at all. More accurately, I realized that I might have actually suppressed the memory years ago or something. So I tried to dig deep into my memories, hoping to remember and apologize to this woman so that she would let me go. I think back as far as I could, because in real life I was definitely a clumsy, careless kid who got a lot of people hurt. I thought back to a lot of those people I almost forgot about from my childhood. And though I had to relive the memory of getting them hurt, I had to keep reminding myself that they all were okay in the end. I then thought a lot of other people I might have hurt when I was very young, but could not remember at all. I thought, what if when I was 3 I pushed some kid down the stairs? What if I somehow tripped and pushed some other kid off the subway platform, and so on? The worst part was that the more I fabricated these scenarios, the more they seemed to transform into actual buried memories. The more I did this, the more weighed down by guilt I became, to the point that I almost gave up trying to remember and just accepting my judgment and punishment by this now gargantuan woman. Just as I was about to fully give up, some voice within me screamed, "You did nothing wrong. Get up." Immediately, I shook off my depressed state and started chanting, "I did nothing wrong." At first, I could only whisper it, but eventually I found the strength to say it louder and louder, eventually shouting it on the top of my lungs. As I did that, I saw the woman become smaller and less menacing, and I kept going until she was back to her initial size. In the end, I stood over her and told her, "I don't know who you are or what you think I did, but you will not hold me back with your guilt," or something like that. I left her sobbing on the floor and headed towards the door again. Right before I turned the doorknob, she said, "I will find you again, and I will never forgive you for killing my son." I just walked out the door and into the sun, which was when I woke up. The worst part about this dream was that for a solid month, I kept asking myself, what if I actually did get some woman's son killed? and either completely forgot about it and or suppressed that memory into the deepest depths of my mind. It completely consumed me, to the point that I started looking through old newspaper archives and actually sat down with my mom and other older relatives to ask them this question. Thankfully, they confirmed that nothing like this ever happened, despite how clumsy and careless I was as a kid. Eventually, I told my friends about this dream, and they said they had eerily similar ones. But thankfully, they also said it's a common one if you have certain unresolved issues or something like that. The user Daisuke90's story is packed with classic nightmare structure. It starts in a place of comfort, nostalgic childhood homes, and slowly turns into something sinister. That's a common setup, dreams luring you in with familiarity before layering in dread. The repeated doors act almost like a descent, with each one taking you deeper into your memory and unease. By the time you reach the basement, which is basically a dream symbol of repressed fear, the tone fully shifts into horror. The sobbing woman turning hostile is another frequent nightmare theme. Vulnerability that flips without warning. And then there's the guilt spiral, where the dreamer starts inventing past crimes that feel real. That's a terrifying trick of the brain. Your dream stops just scaring you and starts making you doubt your own past. The shifting size, her growing, the dreamer shrinking, is also common in fear dreams. It shows how overwhelming guilt or anxiety can feel, like it's physically pressing down on you. And even after waking up, that lingering fear, what if it was real, is what really makes a nightmare stick. Something about these dreams, even when they're surreal or exaggerated, feels way too close to something real. This next one, you'll see what I mean. I know the title says one nightmare, but in order to explain my point, I'm going to tell 3 nightmares I had, all related. The first one when I was around 5 or 6, the second one about 2 years ago, and the last one about a few months ago. I'm currently 18 years old. First nightmare. I was in my grandparents' house. However, it looked like mine, but everything was very dark. There were my parents, my sister, my aunts, and my grandparents, and for some reason most of them had their eyes fall on the ground. Interestingly enough, they didn't have any blood coming out of them. It was just a black hole in each of their eye orbits. The funny part is that in order for me to save them, I needed to put their eyes back again and put glue on them. However, I had limited time, or they would be gone forever. Right before I saved all of them, my aunt started turning into a monster. It was some sort of huge tiger, and at that point, I knew my aunt was gone for good, and I would have to put her out of her misery, or she'd have killed everyone. So I took a knife and turned her into pieces. Second nightmare. It was very late at night, and I was in a mall. It was closed, and there was a lot of people still inside. They were trapped. I noticed that all of them were afraid of something. Some of them even had guns with them, like waiting for something. I was alone and very observant of everything happening around me, ready to react if anything would happen. Then, it's like I'm someone else in a dark room. A person very big, and in this room, and there were personal objects, but they don't belong to this person. There were also people's heads in a table, like trophies. Then this person choked, an old lady trying to escape. Moments later, I realized, like if it was a plot twist from a movie, that me, being in the mall, observant and small, it was a younger me, and the big guy was me from the future. I was planning on doing that since then, and I killed all those people. Third nightmare. This is the worst one. I found myself in a forest. I don't remember why I'm there, but there are other teenagers there. I assumed after I woke up that it was some sort of camp. During the day, everything seemed normal, except for one big cave, because it had like scratches carved on rocks around it. Hours later at night, I heard screamings, and a lot of kids were running from something. I got closer, and it was a huge black humanoid thing with large claws and white eyes. In my dream, it was supposed to be a Wendigo. I know now that the creature doesn't actually look like that, but in my dream it did. Apparently, anyone who consumed a Wendigo's eyes, they would gain the ability to heal instantly and get enough strength to kill it. So I tried to get close and trick it to get its eyes, without getting hurt, but it didn't work. After it saw me, it sank its claws into my left arm. Even though it was a dream, I felt an immense amount of pain. Then, with its other arm's claw, it ripped my stomach right around my ribs. At that moment, I realized that it was vulnerable since it had both of its claws inside of me, so I took the chance to take out its eyes and ate them, blinding it at the same time that I was saving myself from dying. Then, I got stronger, enough to tear it apart. And here's the scariest part. I ate the whole thing alive. But even worse, I enjoyed it. The feeling of being like predator to something that was so powerful made me feel good. After this dream, I realized that I was never afraid of any of those monsters. In fact, I'm not scared of anything except for one thing: myself. This is such a good example of how some nightmares evolve with you, each one more disturbing, but still threaded together by reoccurring fears. The user F1TT0's first dream plays like a classic childhood nightmare. Surreal logic, urgency, people you love in danger, the glue and eyeballs feel almost cartoonish at first, but it shifts into something primal, being forced to destroy someone the writer cares about because they've turned into a monster. The second dream jumps forward in time and it turns inward. It uses one of the most terrifying nightmare twists. They themselves are the monster. They go from being the observant bystander to realizing they're the future threat, a version of themselves capable of terrible things. That loss of control over who they might become is deeply unsettling. Then, the third one pushes it even further. They confront something monstrous, beat it, and then become something worse. There's no fear of the creature, just this disturbing joy in dominance and destruction. And that's the real horror of it. The fear isn't outside anymore. It's entirely inside themselves. All three dreams move from trying to save others to hurting others to enjoying it. A nightmare arc that's less about monsters in the dark and more about what happens if you lose control over yourself. That's way scarier than any creature. More on the nightmare Reddit stories right after this. Okay, let's keep going. This next one takes things in an even darker direction. I dream about driving a car and then going blind while driving. Everyone in the dream tells me to just open my eyes, to which I respond, my eyes are open. It's such a scary sensation to feel so powerless, and it feels so real. But definitely, driving without eyesight is a creepy, reoccurring dream I have. Now, I know this one is short, but it taps into one of the most common nightmare themes: loss of control. And in this case, it's total sensory loss, in a situation where control is everything. Driving is all about awareness, reaction, visibility, so going blind behind the wheel feels like your brain throwing you into the deep end of helplessness. The fact that everyone in the dream is saying just open your eyes only makes it worse. That adds a layer of gaslighting, like the dream is saying you should be able to fix this, but you can't. That's a nightmare loop a lot of people fall into, trying to explain yourself while the world refuses to believe you. Reoccurring dreams like this usually come up during times of anxiety or when someone feels like they're being held responsible for something out of their control. It's simple on the surface, but deeply unsettling, and way more common than people realize. Dreams like that are a great example of how our brains simulate fear in ways we'd never experience in real life, but still feel totally real. And that's exactly like this next story. I was in this random house with like 5 guys I had no clue who. We were all partying or something like that. Then a guy mentions that the house was haunted. But after he said that, it went all downhill. The power went out and I could feel this dark presence, then heard a guy scream. We all got freaked out and ran in different areas. I was safe for like 20 minutes till a guy ran in. He was covered with blood and looked traumatized. That evil thing was after him. I was yelling at him to not get near me, but then the evil thing came in and the guy exploded. I screamed in terror, closing my eyes, but then the power came back on and the evil thing was gone. I walked around and saw 3 out of the 5 guys dead. I started running for some reason and ended up in this room filled with water, like a 4-foot pool. I walked in and 2 of the guys came running in at the same time. That's when the power went out again, and both guys started screaming, and I was traumatized to the point I couldn't move. But then, all of a sudden, I ended up in my house, in my brother's room. That's where my brother and cousin were sleeping. I saw the evil thing and went to attack it. I somehow got a knife and sliced the evil thing's arms and legs, but then I turned around and my brother's arms and legs were cut off. I got so scared I ran out of the house, and this other evil thing was running after me. I ran into my neighbor's house and locked the door behind me and then went out into the back door. I looked behind me and saw the evil thing banging on the door. I climbed over the fence and ran back to my house. When I ran into the front yard, I passed out. Then I woke up in real life. Zookeeper Game number 3434's post reads like a full-on descent into classic nightmare chaos, complete with disorientation, isolation, and the fear of being hunted by something they don't understand. The initial setup is familiar: a random group, a party, someone mentions a haunting, then everything spirals. The dark presence kicking in right after the power goes out is such a common and deeply effective nightmare trigger, because it taps into that primal fear of a dark combined with the fear of the unknown. The exploding guy? That's pure shock horror, sudden, grotesque, and impossible to process, just like in actual nightmares where violence happens without logic or buildup. Then there's the watery room, another classic nightmare trope, being trapped or slowed down, and the paralysis that follows when others are attacked right next to them. The helplessness is suffocating. But the real twist here is when the dream shifts to somewhere safe and familiar, their brother's room, only for the horror to follow and punish them for trying to fight back. That moment they injure the evil entity only to find out their brother mutilated instead is brutal. That's the nightmare's core cruelty, punishing them for trying to be the hero. And then it devolves even more, being chased, running house to house, nowhere feeling safe, and their body finally giving out in the front yard. That's textbook nightmare escalation. They're not just afraid of the monster anymore. They're afraid of what it's doing to them. They're losing their ability to think, to move, to resist. And that's what makes this so scary. The evil thing isn't just chasing them, it's breaking them down. It's wild how different every nightmare can be, but they all hit the same nerve. Here's another one that really stuck with me. Back when I was a little younger, I had 2 dreams that have left a mark on me for just how horrible they were. So, let me set up the nightmares and their locations. So, at my aunt's house, in real life, we have all the cookouts and get-togethers there, and it's just a place where you can go just hang out. She has a giant yard in front of the house and a hill with railroad tracks behind her house, with deep woods behind them. Now, for the actual dreams, the first one, I was at my aunt's house, alone, other than her, just hanging out. Eventually I tell her I'll be back later. I'm going on a walk through the woods. It was summer in the dream, so the trees were green and flowers were blooming. I started walking, and after a few minutes of walking, found a small, beautiful blue pond. I stopped and just admired my new spot I had found to hang out. I started looking around the edge of the pond and the green bushes that surrounded it. My eyes finally landed on a humanoid head on the other side, poking out of the bright green bush. It was pale and bald, and you could just tell that it's not a human. The nature was still gorgeous, but my eyes were just locked on this head. I stood there for what felt like around 7 minutes, staring at this head, frozen in pure fear. To this day, this nightmare has been the most horrifying fear I have ever felt. Staring at the head just filled my body with the most intense dread that I have ever felt. Words can't describe the fear staring at this still head gave me. I finally turned around and ran, but I didn't see it following me. I got back to the house and ran down the hill, and now, seeing that my whole family was outside, I told my uncle about the head and he said, "Get in the house." It seemed like everyone knew what it was except me. Nobody would tell me what it was. They would just say things like, "It's back," and "Do you think it'll come here again?" while I was left completely in the dark about it. Last thing I remember was looking out the window and seeing my whole family staring at it, now standing up on the hill. Then I woke up. Nightmare 2. It was a cookout and suddenly everything went dark. Not like night, like a not being able to see 3 feet in front of you dark. We all went inside to see the light, and eventually my cousin convinced me to go and ride the golf cart around the yard with her. My memory is a little rougher with this dream, but I'll try my best to explain it. We rode around in the dark for a while and came across this big tree my aunt has in her yard, and for some reason you could see better there. It wasn't the intense dark that was everywhere else, it was just as dark as night with a full moon, and in the brighter clearing on all fours was the creature from Dream 1, just staring at us again. We drove away and we found more of them. Giant ones, probably 10 foot tall, and on all fours with heads just as big as the golf cart itself, looking angry and hungry, running at the golf cart. You know the speed of a rabbit running away? These giant monsters ran at that speed, but for some reason, we always got away. We finally reached the porch and the light was on, and for some reason, they couldn't come into the light. We stood on the porch looking into the dark, as these larger-than-life faces would poke out every now and again to look at us, and that's when I woke up. Suite Assignment 3168's Nightmare really captures that dream fear of something unknown lurking just beyond safety, especially in a familiar place like their aunt's house. The first dream, Frozen Terror, staring at the pale humanoid head, shows how nightmares trap us in fear we can't escape. The family's secretive reactions add a haunting mystery that makes it even scarier. The second dream intensifies this darkness and danger, with giant monsters hunting them through the yard. The golf cart escape and the porch light as a fragile safe zone highlights that classic nightmare theme of light versus overwhelming darkness. The lingering threat of those giant faces peeking out keeps the fear alive, even at the end. Together, these dreams turn from comfort into dread, perfectly showing how nightmares prey on isolation, fear, and the feeling of never being truly safe. Nightmares like that are exactly why some researchers believe our dreams are just fear rehearsals. And in this next one, the fear gets intense. Just woke up from one of the most terrifying and real-feeling nightmares I, 27, male, have ever experienced. Everything was going along as a normal dream, and all of a sudden I felt a very eerie presence, like I shouldn't be where I was in the dream, and something wanted me out. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was an old house and nothing bad could happen. I was awake, and I had few friends and family who were also awake. I blinked, and they're all asleep, and all of a sudden look incredibly old. I'm talking see-through, skin and bones type old. Really barely hanging on. Suddenly I feel myself glued to the bed I was lying in, and a figure appeared and explained to me that this was their house, and that I needed to leave before bad things kept happening. Again, I'm stuck against my will in this bed. I start moving, and my wife, 27 female, asks where I'm going and what I'm doing. All I can say is I'm not in control, and that my whole body got incredibly warm, and somehow I woke up in real life. This was the single most terrifying thing I've ever experienced in a nightmare. My wife has always experienced paranormal things since she was a child. People passing messages to her, using her hand to type things on her phone, etc. I'm a big believer in things like this, and I'm curious if something was trying to take over my body as I slept. Weekly_fly_486's nightmare taps into a deeply common fear: the loss of control over one's body, space, or reality. The sudden shift from normalcy to dread, the aging of loved ones, and the sense of being pinned down by an unseen force are all classic nightmare elements. And, like we know, these dreams often show up during times of stress, vulnerability, or emotional imbalance. And they're more common than people might think. Many experience nightmares where something seems to be taking over or pushing them out of familiar places or even their own bodies. It's terrifying, but also a shared human experience. It's wild how consistent nightmare themes are across people. Even with the details changed, the feelings of being chased, watched, or trapped always come back. Some people seem to have more intense or frequent nightmares than others, and there's a few reasons for why that might be. People with more active or imaginative brains, especially those who daydream a lot or are highly creative, tend to have more vivid dreams in general. Combine that with stress, disrupted sleep cycles, or mental health struggles like anxiety or trauma, and your brain has even more material to twist into nightmares. Basically, if your brain doesn't slow down during the day, it's probably not going to stop at night either. More on the nightmare Reddit stories right after this. I have a nightmare I still remember to this day. Dinner is ready, but it just needs one thing: the main course: cooked human flesh. One of the guests casually brings it out and sets it on the table. Everyone's excited, serving themselves and digging in like it's totally normal. Then one girl takes a bite, pauses, and turns to the host. "Wait, what is this exactly?" The host just shrugs and says, "Oh, it's pig. I mean, they're the closest to humans, right? They use pig hearts for human bodies. Wait, did you really want me to get human flesh? I thought that was a joke." The girl spits it out into her napkin, glares at everyone, and mutters, "Yep, I have to do everything around here." She grabs a small knife and goes after one of the other guests. They dodge, freaked out, and manage to grab a larger knife. But when they turn around, she's gone. Then, out of nowhere, they feel a jab to their leg. She's under the table. They slash down at her, hitting her arm, not hard enough to kill, just enough to defend themselves. But she keeps coming, and she won't stop. They see an axe in a nearby closet and grab it. And right as she's about to slice their leg open again, they swing. One solid blow to her back. It doesn't kill her, but she's clearly paralyzed. They stand there, stunned, and then they look around. One of the other guests is lying on the ground, stabbed in the heart, dead. The guest who brought the pig, gone. They know they need to clean up. They start to head towards the bathroom, but realize they can't leave any blood behind. Before they can even act, they spot movement. The missing guest is back, stalking through the house with a giant knife. They sneak past somehow and make it to the bathroom. And once they're inside, they finally stop and look in the mirror. That's where the dream ends. I'm not sure what the dream means or if it has any meaning, but there are definitely patterns that show up in nightmares across the board, like being chased, falling, losing control of your body, being trapped somewhere, or seeing loved ones hurt. These aren't random scary images, they usually connect to real-life triggers. Feeling chased might reflect stress or pressure you're trying to avoid. Falling often shows up when someone feels overwhelmed or like things are slipping out of control. Nightmares about losing your voice or not being able to move, those tend to pop up when people are feeling powerless in their waking life. Basically, nightmares take real emotions, fear, guilt, stress, and translate them into exaggerated, sometimes surreal scenarios. So, if you've ever wondered, why did my brain show me that? Chances are, it's trying to process something you haven't dealt with yet. Some people don't dream much, or don't remember their dreams at all, and then there are people who constantly find themselves trapped in dream loops, stress spirals, or full-on nightmarish worlds. So, what's going on there? Well, there's a few things science has pointed to. People with higher emotional sensitivity, anxiety, PTSD, or disrupted sleep patterns tend to have more vivid or more intense dreams in general. And the more REM sleep you get, the more fragmented it is. The more likely your brain is to generate chaotic or distressing dream content. Basically, if your brain's working overtime during that day, it's probably not going to chill out at night either. But there's also another theory, that nightmares aren't just random emotional discharge. They could be your brain trying to rehearse danger. Like, from an evolutionary standpoint, dreaming about threats gave early humans a mental sandbox to practice reacting to scary situations. So, those intense dreams where you're being chased, hunted, or powerless, that might be your brain trying to train you for real-life fear, even if the fear itself isn't logical. There's also growing research into whether some nightmares are the brain trying to integrate traumatic experiences or deep unresolved emotions, like it's doing shadow work without your permission. That's why some nightmares feel so personal, even when they're filled with surreal or horror movie stuff. They mean something, even if it's not always clear what. So, yeah, it's not just stress or bad luck. Some brains are wired to dream more vividly, process more deeply, and sometimes that means confronting your worst fears in your sleep. Nightmares might feel like random chaos when we're in them, but they're often doing something deeper, helping us process, rehearse, or confront the things we don't always face during the day. Whether it's guilt, fear, loss of control, or just that primal feeling that something's not right, our dreams have a way of pulling it all to the surface. And while it's easy to wake up and shake them off, sometimes they stick with us for a reason. Maybe it's not about escaping the nightmare. Maybe it's about figuring out what it's trying to tell us. So, what do you think? Are the things we see in our nightmares really out there? Be sure to follow us on Instagram @OutThereCryptids for episode posts and updates and more. Join our community on Discord where we dive even deeper into the mysteries we explore here on the podcast. The link can be found on our Instagram. And if you're loving the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. As a patron, you'll get exclusive perks like bonus episodes, early access, and even surprises. See you next week.